She's 68 years old. She hasn't felt sharp in 2 years, and she has no idea yet that a 2,000-person clinical trial is about to describe exactly what she needs to do about it. I'll come back to her. First, let me tell you about the trial. They recruited 2,111 older adults, ages 60 to 79, from communities across the United States, racially diverse, economically diverse, geographically diverse, all of them at elevated risk for cognitive decline, sedentary lifestyles, suboptimal diets, poor cardiometabolic health, family history of dementia. The kind of profile that, in most clinical settings, would prompt a prescription and a follow-up appointment. Instead, the Alzheimer's Association gave half of them a structured program. Regular exercise, the mind diet, cognitive and social challenge, monthly blood pressure monitoring, peer team meetings with accountability and support. 2 years, no drugs. And on July 28, 2025, the results were published simultaneously in the Journal of the American Medical Association and presented at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in Toronto. Both groups improved. Both groups, structured and self-guided, showed meaningful improvement in global cognitive function over 2 years. The structured group showed statistically significantly greater improvement, and the cognitive benefits were consistent across age, sex, ethnicity, heart health status, and genetic risk profile, including in carriers of the ApoE4 gene, the most significant known genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. The trial is called U.S. Pointer. It is the first large-scale randomized controlled trial to demonstrate that a structured, accessible, sustainable lifestyle intervention can protect cognitive function in diverse older adult populations across the United States. I'm Dr. Ben, and this is the video I've been building toward for 12 episodes. Because what U.S. Pointer confirmed in over 2,000 people in a randomized trial published in JAMA is the synthesis of everything this series has covered. Not any single intervention working in isolation, all of them working together. And the effect of combining them is not additive. The researchers described it specifically. When delivered within a structured framework with accountability and specific recommendations, the combined program can effectively protect brain health in older adults at elevated risk for dementia. Protect, present tense. In living people. In a randomized trial. Stay with me, because I want to show you exactly what the program looked like, how it connects to everything we've discussed, what it means for the woman I mentioned at the start, and the one structural insight from U.S. Pointer that changes how you think about making any change at all. Let me start with what the program actually contained. U.S. Pointer's structured intervention was built around 4 pillars: physical activity, nutrition, cognitive and social challenge, and cardiometabolic risk management. Physical activity, aerobic exercise, delivered through structured group sessions and individual goals. Walking, cycling, swimming, the kinds of moderate aerobic movement we covered in video 11. The protocol that Erickson's 2011 PNOS study showed increased hippocampal volume by 2% in 12 months of walking. The same exercise that increases BDNF, reduces neuroinflammation, supports Akkermansia growth in the gut, anchors circadian rhythm, and improves glymphatic sleep. Frances hadn't exercised consistently since her 50s. The structured group in U.S. Pointer started exactly where she was sedentary, at risk, and beginning with small, measurable goals. Nutrition. The Mind diet, a hybrid of the Mediterranean and DASH diets, specifically designed around the foods with the strongest evidence for cognitive protection. Green leafy vegetables, berries, fish, olive oil, nuts, whole grains, limited red meat, butter, and processed foods. The dietary pattern that supports the gut microbiome diversity we discussed in videos 2 and 9. The one that Ida, the retired teacher with the remarkable blood work, had been eating by habit for 30 years, without knowing it was what centenarians eat. Frances ate dinner at 9, because that was when her husband got home. The Mind diet participants in Pointer moved their eating window earlier. Their gut microbiome data from the ancillary studies, still being analyzed, is expected to show exactly why timing matters as much as content. Cognitive and social challenge, Brain HQ cognitive training, peer group meetings, social engagement. The brain requires not just biological maintenance, but active use the formation of new connections that BDNF supports but experience produces. Cognitive engagement isn't separate from the biology. It's what gives the biology something to build with. Frances had stopped attending the book club she'd belonged to for a decade because she couldn't follow the conversations anymore. The cognitive training component of Pointer was designed for people at exactly her stage. Cardiometabolic risk management, monthly blood pressure monitoring, cardiovascular health review, medication management where appropriate. This is the Pillar 1 component, the part of the program that includes asking whether the medication list is working for the brain, not just against the condition it was prescribed for. Frances was taking a PI she hadn't needed in 3 years. She was taking a sleep aid she'd started after a difficult period at work. Nobody had reviewed the list. Now, what does U.S. Pointer confirm about the series you've been watching? It confirms that none of the interventions we've covered exist in isolation. The same researchers who designed U.S. Pointer ran ancillary studies examining how the intervention affected sleep quality, the gut microbiome, and neurovascular health. Those ancillary results are being presented at subsequent conferences. But the direction is already visible. The systems we've been discussing throughout this series, medications, gut, body clock, sleep, exercise, diet, are not independent variables. They form a network, and in a network, multiple nodes moving in the right direction simultaneously produce effects that no single node can produce alone. This is the insight U.S. Pointer adds to everything we've discussed. It's not that the individual interventions don't work. They do. The Erickson walking trial grew hippocampal tissue. The Stanford fermented food trial reduced 19 inflammatory proteins. The Mass General melatonin insulin study showed measurable blood sugar improvement from shifting dinner timing. The CBTI literature shows more durable insomnia improvement than medication. The medication review literature shows meaningful cognitive improvement when anticholinergic burden is reduced. But U.S. Pointer shows what happens when people do these things together, consistently, with structure and accountability. The effects don't add, they amplify. Now let me tell you what happened to Frances. Her name is a composite. This story reflects dozens of real cases the research literature documents. She's 68. She'd been told her labs were fine for her age. She was taking a pie for acid reflux she hadn't had in 3 years. She was taking a sleep aid nightly that she'd started after a difficult period at work. She was eating dinner at 9 because that was when her husband got home. She hadn't exercised consistently since her 50s. She was foggy in the afternoons and couldn't remember the last time she'd felt sharp. She wasn't in a clinical trial. She didn't have a structured program. But after watching this series and taking the questions it suggested to her doctor, something changed. Her physician agreed to review her medication list for anticholinergic burden. The PPI taper began. The sleep aid was replaced with CBTI and melatonin. Her fasting insulin and carb were checked. Her doctor ordered a gut microbiome assessment through a gastroenterologist. She moved dinner to 7. She started a morning walk 30 minutes, 5 days a week. She added kefir to her breakfast. None of these changes were dramatic. None required a prescription. All of them required a conversation her doctor had been willing to have once she brought the right questions. At 6 months, she told her physician something that her physician asked her to write down. She said, "I feel like I got my brain back. I don't know which change did it. I think it was all of them." That is the U.S. Pointer finding in one person's words. We don't know which component drove the cognitive benefit. Neither did the researchers. The trial wasn't designed to isolate individual effects. What it was designed to test was whether the combined package, delivered with structure and accountability, produced measurable cognitive protection. It did, across 2,111 people. Published in JAMA. So what does this mean for you? It means the sum of the series is more important than any individual video. If you watched only the sleep video and switched your sleep aid, that's valuable. If you watched only the gut video and started eating fermented foods, that's valuable. But if you looked at the whole picture, the medications, the gut, the body clock, the sleep, the exercise, the diet, and began moving each of those systems in the right direction simultaneously, the research now suggests the effect is greater than the sum of those parts. And here is the one structural insight from U.S. Pointer that I think is the most important thing I can leave you with. The difference between the structured group and the self-guided group was not the content. Both groups received the same information, the same recommendations, the same general program. The difference was accountability and structure. Peer team meetings, regular check-ins, specific goals reviewed weekly, a navigator who followed up. The self-guided group still improved. The structured group improved more. This tells us something about how behavior change works in the real world. Information alone, even excellent information, produces less cognitive protection than information plus accountability. The person who watches this series and then talks to a doctor about one specific question is more likely to follow through than the person who watches and takes a mental note. The person who starts a walking group with a neighbor is more likely to still be walking at 12 months than the person who starts alone. The structure doesn't have to be a clinical trial. It can be a scheduled appointment with your physician to review your medication list, a regular walk with someone else, a fermented food you commit to buying every week, a specific time you stop eating each evening. The research suggests that the accumulation of small, structured commitments, not grand lifestyle overhauls, is what the brain responds to. Here is the final question of this series, the one that brings everything together. Looking at everything in my current health, picture my medications, my gut health, my meal timing, my sleep quality, and my exercise habits, which of these areas represents the most significant modifiable risk factor for my cognitive health? And what would a structured plan for addressing it look like? That question asks your physician to see the whole picture at once. It signals that you understand the systems are connected. It asks not just for information, but for a plan with structure. And it positions your physician as the person who helps you decide where to start, not the person who hands you a single answer and sends you on your way. This series began with Margaret giving away her recipe box, preparing to disappear. It covered Martin losing his words on day 3 of an antibiotic and getting them back. It covered Ida, who had built something remarkable in her gut without knowing she was doing it. And a dozen other people whose ordinary daily decisions, the pill they took each night, the time they ate dinner, whether they walked in the morning, were quietly shaping the trajectory of their brain. And now a trial published in JAMA that confirmed when all of these systems are addressed together in a structured program with accountability in diverse older adults at elevated risk for dementia cognition improves. Not declined, more slowly. Improved. The brain after 60 is not simply declining, it is responding to what it's being given and what it's being denied, to the medications in the cabinet and the bacteria in the gut and the time on the kitchen clock, to whether you're moving in the morning and what you're eating and when you're stopping. You are not a passive passenger in what happens to your brain between now and the end of your life. That is the message. That has always been the message. U.S. Pointer just published it in JAMA. I'm Dr. Ben. Thank you for watching this series. Subscribe for more because the research doesn't stop, and neither does this channel. The information in this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult your doctor or a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, medications, exercise program, or health management plan.